Our continuation to the Gospel of John. I'm going to set up my cheater chair. There's two reasons for this. One, the great rabbis would always teach being seated, ready for the bang. Sounds like a chiropractor when they have those tables that give away. That locks in place so I don't fall down and embarrass myself even further. We recall that Jesus heals the man born blind, and he does the terrible thing, heals him on the Sabbath day. Spits on the ground, makes some mud, puts it on his eyes. If I go to the eye doctor and they do that, I'm going to find another eye doctor. Unless, of course, I wash it off and then it works. And then, of course, they have to investigate the healing because the healing occurred on the Sabbath. And you can't go around making people better on the Sabbath. What a terrible thing to think of doing. And so then the Pharisees, they investigate, they talk to the young man that Jesus healed, they talk to his parents, they talk and they talk and they talk. And because Jesus healed on the Sabbath, they continue to believe that Jesus is like one of the worst people ever. It's God in the flesh. So on the heels of this continuing conversation, recall that Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate but climbs in some other way is a thief and a robber." In doing this, he is talking very, very tersely to the Pharisees. And of course, they don't pick it up because they're not thinking that they might actually be those thieves and robbers who came in to basically exploit the sheep. Down in verse 5, "But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice." Jesus used this figure of speech. The Pharisees just didn't get it. The Pharisees were not being followed by anybody except maybe some of their own kind. It's kind of a mutual admiration society. They would get together and tell each other how great they were. The Pharisees were not the shepherds of the people that God intended. They were thieves and robbers. They were doing exploitive things. Ezekiel chapter 34. In Ezekiel, there are passages in Ezekiel I will never preach on. I have vowed that. If you know the book of Ezekiel, you will understand why. So God says, "Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel, the ones who are supposed to be leaders. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to you, shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but you do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, or helped the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays, or searched for the lost." Think of what Jesus is talking about. Remember, the shepherd leaves the one and leaves the 99, goes after the one. That's what should be happening with the shepherds, but that's not what they're doing. You have not brought back the strays or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally, so they were scattered because there was no shepherd. And when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep wandered over the mountains on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched for them or looked for them. The shepherd goes after the lost sheep. So what Jesus is doing here is he is harshly rebuking the Pharisees. Now, we also understand that if you were doing Pharisee speak, and there was an allusion made to a biblical principle, their minds would go to it because they had the whole thing memorized. So when Jesus is saying this, they know exactly what he's talking about, but they're, of course, in denial. Matthew chapter 9. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. Remember, you bind up the sick. Or you work to heal the sick. You bind up the wounded. You take care of the sheep that are messed up. And what the Pharisees would do would simply be, oh, they're a sinner. Of course they deserve what they're getting. It's terrible. And they would disassociate themselves from the lowlifes. How do you know they were lowlifes? Well, they were poor or sick. And so that, of course, put you under God's judgment, because we know that when people are good, they never get sick and they never aren't rich. Okay. Very tongue-in-cheek there, please. When he saw the crowds, verse 36, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Continuing on in Ezekiel, for this is what the sovereign Lord says, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. What does Jesus do? He goes after the lost sheep. This is a statement of Christ's deity. So when Jesus is talking like this, did I say talking? Wow. When Jesus is talking like this, okay, it is a deity illusion because he goes after his sheep. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them, so I will look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. I will bring them out from the nations, will gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains. He's going to take care of the sheep. Why? Because he is the good shepherd. This is what Yahweh does. This is what Jesus does. I will search for the lost, down in verse 16. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. I will not judge them, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. A warning to the Pharisees. You dress in your fine robes. You make your phylacteries out of incredibly ornate and expensive wood, and yet you are so incredibly lost. You are the ones who, the one who enters by the gate is a shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought them out, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. And none of the people of Israel knew the voice of the Pharisees except the voice of judgment. Continuing on, Jesus is the gate for the sheep. He's the only means to get to the Father. We'll get to John 14:6, where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. What an incredibly arrogant statement, unless he was actually the way, the truth, and the life, because he is God come in the flesh. No one comes to the Father but through him. No one. There are no exceptions to this. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. The sheep aren't listening to the Pharisees, the ones who were supposed to be the shepherds. Nobody's going to follow them. Verse 11, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. Now this is a contrast. That was supposed to say bad shepherd. The good shepherd versus a bad. Supposed to say, okay, I made this modification like early this morning, so it should say the bad shepherd versus a good shepherd. So ignore the first good there. The first good is no good. Okay, so you have the bad shepherd versus the good shepherd. Go to the 23rd Psalm. We'll be there in just a moment. The Lord is my shepherd. When you look in your biblical text, you will see Lord written in all caps. So you have the normal font and then a slightly smaller font to say Lord, which tells you that the term for Lord there is Yahweh. Okay, the ultimate high name for God. And so when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord, Yahweh is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Notice the caps on Lord. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along. Okay, we're going to, again, take a look at this more in depth later. So we'll just kind of cover it very briefly at this juncture. Jesus is the good shepherd. He is the one that the psalmist was talking about. What does the good shepherd do? The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Why would he do that? Because there is sheep. And the good shepherd defends the sheep with his very life, which is exactly what Jesus did for us on the cross, which we just went over in taking communion. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and he runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. Understand that the hired hands knew what to do when a wolf was coming. They did not care about the sheep enough to risk anything in their lives at all. The hired hands, they were probably pretty good with slings. I mean, watching sheep is not that exciting. You got to have something to do. There's no YouTube. There's no internet. So you get really good with that sling. And maybe you practice with your staff or your rod and learn some like ninja-type skills. Wolf is coming. Boom. Yeah, you do these things. The hired hands cared nothing for the sheep, so they would run away. That's what the Pharisees were. They would not defend the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. This is the second time that Jesus has said, I am the good shepherd. Very important. He repeats himself because he wants us to get this, to know it really well. My sheep know me. Interactions over a long period of time. Shirley Ann, I'm sorry, I'm not a dog person. We tried having a dog once. It was a little dachshund. Okay, we weren't dog people. Okay, I told you the story. The dog ran away. Somebody found it, called us, and they talked about how that's a really nice little dog. Oh, would you just like to keep him? Really? Yeah, we'll make that sacrifice. Whew. Never was so glad to get rid of something. The dog was theoretically housebroken when we got it, and we learned it was merely theoretical. However, we did have a lot of parakeets back in the day. And they get the parakeet home, they take it, they grab it out of the cage. Sometimes they use a net. Anybody like parakeets, little birds? Oh, okay. I mean, they're great. They chew things up, so you got to keep an eye on them. But the parakeets, so they're in the cage and they're just terrified. You put your hand near there and they're just jumping around trying to get used, just trying to get away from your hand. And what do you want to do? You want to say, I got a little birdie on my finger. It's so cute. It's so... Sherry, you can repent of your sneer about the birds, okay? But you do that, and the bird will be running away, and you wait until the bird gets tired, and then you force your hand under the bird, and the bird just sits there on your finger exhausted. Then he learns it doesn't really hurt. Then you take the brave day, and you let the bird out of the cage, and the bird goes, whee! Fly. The bird's never flown a distance like that before. And it's flying all around the house, and you're trying to get the bird, and you finally wait until the bird gets tired and drops on the ground exhausted. Hopefully, you don't have a cat. Because that would be a disaster. There's another story for you at some point. Not a cat. Anyway, and so then you get the bird on your finger, and then you have some banana. Birds love bananas. The banana strings that we don't eat? Birds love to chew those, and you give it a banana string, and the birds that are eating the banana, and over a short amount of time, the little cute bird would get used to you. We had one bird, it would sit on Ann's shoulder and snuggle into her hair, because it's warm and cozy. And we have names for the birds. One was Doc. There was one bird named Squidney. Youth group kid came up with that name. But because of time spent with the birds got to know that we weren't scary, and that if you hang around with us, you might get a treat. You might eat some banana. You might get to chew on pages of my Bible. I have chew marks here. Sometime I'll show them to you. I'm working on the sermon, the bird is out, and all of a sudden, stop chewing on it. But you got to watch these parakeets, because they don't know what's good for them as far as eating. We had one parakeet, and I like to solder things, and I had this phone book. They're worthless now. I mean, nobody uses a phone book. I mean, if you do, I'm sorry, but we on our phones we look up numbers, and so I would use the phone book for soldering. That would be underneath, and sometimes there'd be solder on the phone book. And lo and behold, I wasn't watching, and we had a bird, and it ate solder. Okay, I messed up, and the bird died. Sheep as well, they don't know what's good to eat. Little children walking through the forest, they don't know what poison ivy looks like. I'm the good shepherd. I know my sheep. Why? Because I died for them, and I desire to spend time with them, that there might be this great deep fellowship between us. Note that this shepherd has prior full knowledge of each and every sheep. The sheep just need to learn to trust him. Even trust him when he sometimes has got to use that staff and give them a nudge to get them on the right path, to get them going in the right direction. The sheep need to realize that club is not meant for them, it's meant for the wolves. If there is someone who is willing to die for you, I think you can trust them. And we can trust our shepherd, because not only was he willing to die for us, he was active to die for us. I laid down my life for the sheep. Why would the shepherd lay down his life for sheep? Because he loves them. Intimacy, and at this point, the sheep are just beginning to learn about him. He came unto his own, and his own did not receive him, received him not, because they didn't really know him. Once they got to know him, those who chose to know him, they were really, really close and tight with him. I love this, verse 16. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Gentiles, we're in. He wants us for his sheep. You know, before that, it was just kind of like a Jewish thing, and that's what the Jewish people thought. In Ephesians chapter 2, Paul writes, therefore remember that formerly you who were Gentiles, or who are Gentiles by birth, and called uncircumcised by those who call themselves the circumcision, that done in the body by the hands of men. Remember that at one time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenants of the promise, without hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away have been brought near through the blood of Christ, for he himself is our peace, who has made the two one and destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by abolishing in his flesh the law with its commandments and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new man out of the two, thus making peace. Gentiles, we're in. So when Jesus is talking about these other sheep, I think the Pharisees were picking up on this. What other sheep could he be talking about? Oh, he can't be talking about Samaritans. Oh, no. So Jesus is saying he wants everybody. Everybody. He is the light for the Gentiles. Through you, go back to Abraham, all nations will be blessed. Look in Revelation chapter 5. People will be praising God from every tribe, tongue, and nation. That's what Jesus is building, because he's our shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is I lay down my life only to take it up again. This is not speaking of a conditional love. This is in contrast to the bad shepherds. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And the Father's, I love my son. This is the kind of thing he does. Okay? So the Father, it was not a conditional love that the Father had for the Son, but it's a comparative love. Jesus is the good shepherd. They're the bad shepherds. No one takes his... I got that. Okay. No one takes his life... wow. We'll change... Sometimes, in all honesty, when I go from one computer to the other, the PowerPoint gets changed a little bit. Go to verse 18. No one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. So in this, in the end, Jesus' death in our place was his call. Remember, he says to the Father, Father, if you are willing, take this away from me. But if not, I'm going to do the will of my Father. Jesus says, I have authority to lay it down, authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. The term command there might be a little strong. Think of charge, or if you even want to say, this responsibility the Father gave to me. This is what I'm for. Oh, then the Jews, the skeptics, the leaders, they heard these words, they were divided. Many of them said, he is demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him? But others said, these are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? Obviously, Jesus, he's not going to be a liar. The Jews that are the leadership, he's nuts. Some people say he's a legend. He never really existed. People made him up. What a silly statement. Or he's the Lord. He's got to be one or the other. The others said, these are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? I mean, I can see a demon making somebody blind, but a demon would never reverse what demons can do. Jesus is the good shepherd. And talking to my daughters and trying to reach their brother. I mean, go with the 23rd Psalm. Don't we all want a Psalm 23 life? We want relationship with God, not domination by him. We need to understand that Jesus is terminally committed to us because he died for us. He is the only good shepherd going. He is the only hope, the only way in. He is everyone's hope. He is the intentional hope. He did this on purpose. And so we can say to the good shepherd either, bah, or bah, we're your sheep. Isn't that cute? Bah, like Scrooge, bah humbug. This is the life that we want. The Lord is my shepherd. He provides everything I need. And He makes me lie down in green pastures, the place He wants me to go, where I find refreshment. His desire is to lead me beside quiet waters, not into the turmoil and the chaos of this life. He wants to refresh my soul because we get worn out by this place. He wants to guide us along the right paths for His name's sake. And even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, where it's really bad, we're not going to fear any evil. Why? Because the shepherd's with us. He's got this. His rod and His staff, they comfort me. I can look to the shepherd. He's got that staff. He can kind of pull me out of the places I'm into that I don't need to be in. He can give me that little nudge with the staff. He'd never take it and use it like a club on his sheep. Going to keep nudging. The rod comforts me because He can take out the enemy. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. My life is content. My life is full. And there are people who have tried to do you harm and to do you wrong. Who cares? Because you're good, because you've got this shepherd who loves you and who desires the best for you. And so a table of life, of God's goodness is prepared. And people who might hate us, who don't like us, they see this. And I hope they scratched their heads and they thought, oh, I thought Hugo was a bad guy. But, wow, look at him. Look at God's blessing in his life. You anoint my head with oil. Shepherds would anoint the heads of their sheep with oil. It was like a way to keep the bugs off. And the ticks, they're kind of, but all those things. My cup overflows. God has so incredibly blessed me. He has so incredibly blessed you. We forget this in the country that we are in, where we've got so much stuff. But even in countries where people are very poor, they will sing of the blessings and the mercies of God. His grace overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me. And the term for follow is to chase after me, to catch me, to apprehend me. It could be the word persecute. Lord, surely your love and your goodness, they're chasing after me because they want to connote, they want to give God's blessing in my life all the days of my life. His mercy and love, His goodness and love follows me. Yeah, wow, and then we get to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. How incredibly cool. I'm kind of strange in this. It's going to be so cool to die. Yeah. Yes. All right. How you doing? Oh, she's adorable. All right. I'm not looking forward to the process. And I don't know of anything that's, where I'm dying right away, but, you mentioned the motorcycle hitting the deer, and I'm really, that's riding around here, I'm always looking for the deer. Sometimes for eagles, but especially for the deer. But the idea of getting to go to be with Jesus, it's like, wow. To dwell with Jesus all the days of my life. The Creator God who made me and who loves me so much, who loves you so much, that He died for us when He didn't have to. Can life get better than that? We need to say, bah, or bah, I'm His sheep. I want to follow Him all the days of my life. He is the good shepherd. And the world that we live in is so full of evil shepherds who are trying to pull people away from God into the pit of hell itself, if they can possibly do that. Occasionally, I don't watch the music awards because it just makes me aggravated, and I don't like them anyway. So I don't watch the Super Bowl halftime. I just ignore all that stuff. But some of the people who are actively trying to destroy the lives of our youth, terrible. We need a shepherd. We have one. Follow him. And tell everybody else that you know, bah! Oh yeah, sheep speak their own language. They know what they're saying. Okay? And we point other people